Welcome to the Shaker Lane School Building Committee for August 28th, 2024. The first order of business is to approve the prior meeting minutes. And I think they were all sent out previously, but if we need to refresh our memory, I think I have that on the screen here. I can share.
And I had sent out a proposed motion for that.
I saw that. So let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yep.
So these are the meeting minutes that need to be approved. So is there any discussion? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Bob?
Bob Romley, yes. For the ones that I was at.
Kelly?
Kelly Clenchey, yes.
I can't remember. I can't see who else is on the call here. Stacy, I guess.
Stacy Scott, yes.
Who else from the committee is on?
Mike Scaduto.
Yep. Mike Scaduto, yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
And
Stephen Nudi, yes.
Stephen Nudi.
Stephen Nudi, yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Oh, and Michelle Kane.
Get rid of that.
Michelle Kane. Yeah.
Michelle, thank you. Yeah.
Michelle Kane, yes.
And second order of business is to approve the warrant. Ryan, can you share the warrant?
Let's see. Okay. So we've got a few we've got a few invoices that I sent out earlier today that was actually sent out earlier by actually, I don't know if I'm sending the right one. Mark, help me out. Did they send did the accounting department send something else out that you could share?
I did not get anything from your accounting department. I sent you the invoices a week or so ago.
Okay, so we can go through each invoice if we, if need be. So, okay.
I think the total was a little over $1 million, right?
Yeah, I don't know if we have the totals. I just put it in. Hold on. Let me try to open that.
I can rattle them off if you want, Ryan.
Okay, so let's see. We're gonna go. I apologize for the. Let's go back on, and I can share my screen.
But I don't have the warrant. I don't have the warrant information. I just have
right. So we'll go through each of the invoices. So okay. So first one is Studio G. This is an invoice through July for $45,000. Let's see.
So, Mark, I assume you went through these and recommend approval of all of them?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So this is excuse me. This is an invoice for TTH for the month of
That's us for July, correct?
July. Okay. Total bill amount $14,307. And this is Studio G, which we've already looked at. Sorry.
And there should be a consultant bill from Studio G with their markup on it. Right there,
So
right
this
there.
is,
There it is.
yeah, and that's $5,280. With, actually, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. It's
It's
the, yeah, 5,280.
Yeah, it's $4,800 for the
markup.
$4,800 for the traffic consultant and a 10%
Okay.
markup for Studio G.
Okay. And Mark Stafford, is that all we have?
Yes,
here
sir.
For that?
Yep.
Okay. So it's those three separate invoices that we're looking for approval on tonight.
And Mark, what was the total on those?
The total is 64,587.
Okay.
What he said.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
You just probably do a roll call again. If it's okay, I'll just go through the names because I have a better view on it, if that's okay.
That's great because I
Okay.
can't see them.
All right. So, Kelly Clenchy,
Kelly Clenchy, yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Steve Venuti,
Steve Venuti, yes.
Bob Romley,
Robert Arnold, yes.
Stacy Scott,
Stacy Scott, yes.
Michelle Kane,
Michelle Kane, yes.
Mike Scaduto,
Mike Scaduto, yes.
and Ryan Ferrari, yes. That should be everybody.
Ryan, there's a gentleman from our company, Matt McCafferty, that is online, I think being on hold to let in. That might be the number that was on.
Is that the Zoom user?
Yes, I believe. I think he said he's trying to connect on his phone. So
Okay, so I will admit him, but that's the one thing I've been trying to keep him. This is person is a Zoom user, which without no name, I tend to. So
is there a phone number associated with that?
there is not.
Okay.
I mean, I can let the person on per the chair's approval, but I always get a little bit leery about this. But
Yeah, why don't we not? Then he can hear us on the phone. Why don't we just keep it stand pat? That's fine.
Okay, that's fine then. Okay.
Okay, now that we've approved the invoices, next order of business is to approve the preliminary design program, PMP, and I think Mark has his own sub-agenda to this next steps, and I'll let Mark take it away.
Yes, thanks everybody. So yeah, we do have some other issues that we want to speak to today, but the big issue tonight is getting the approval from the committee for us to submit the PDP on Friday to the MSBA. So I think if we can take a vote on that, get that sort of out of the way first, then COG has some presentation information. We have some updates that we want to walk everybody through. So I think if we can take the vote on the PDP, then we can get into some of the additional information.
I'd like to ask a question before we make the motion to vote on that. Subsequent to our meeting last Wednesday, we had some pushback from a number of the other committees. Have we had any formal input from any of them subsequent to that?
None that I'm aware of.
Nothing formal, Steve, but I did talk to a finance committee member who I knew talked to a select board member. And they just kind of felt that their questions weren't really answered. And that there was more to the story, that we weren't telling them everything. So I think that gets back to the point that, and I brought this up numerous times, we need to make sure that we're communicating everything properly. And this is the first time that those people heard anything about this to that detail. And sometimes when you're involved in it, to the extent that we are, you kind of take things for granted, and you really need to make sure that the audience you're dealing with is understanding. And I know some of the questions that they asked were actually pushed off or weren't answered. If we can't handle 20 people sitting around the table without raising a lot of questions, how are we ever going to handle 800 to 1,000 people at a town meeting? We really need to get our act together and make sure that we're communicating all through this process.
I agree, Steve. I mean, we fed these people with fire hose full of information within a very short period of time. We did not give, well, some of them didn't want to hear the information that we gave them, to be honest.
But-
And some of them just weren't, they weren't prepared for the information that we gave them. So I agree 100%. But
So sometimes, Steve, I think we just need to spoon feed a little bit more. What, you know, we have, especially with the town, once we start to get the public involved in this, you know, we have a newsletter that goes out every month. We should be having something in that newsletter every single month from the Shaker Lane Building Committee. This is what we did since the last meeting. This is what's coming up. These are the steps we're going to take. These are the public meetings we're going to hold. We should make sure, because this is really a big project and we need buy-in from all three of those boards, school committee, select board, and finance committee. We don't have 100% commitment by those boards. This thing goes down in flames.
agreed. So we probably should have a working session in the next few weeks to address all those concerns.
And
Yeah,
I'd like
Steve,
to, I'd like
Steve,
to
are you-
echo- whoops.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's three people had their hands up already. So Mark Stafford, Michelle Kane, and Steve Mitchner have their hands up, just to let you know.
Yeah,
Sure.
I just want to add to this that there was a lot of information that was put together last week. There was a lot of information that's been worked on since May. We have representatives here for the finance committee and the school committee on this board. I don't know what information you share with them when you go back to, and it's not your task to maybe do that. We're going to produce a monthly report going forward at the end of every month that'll talk about everything that's happened the month before, previously, and then what's going to happen the month coming up. But I do agree that we want buy-in from everybody now. So going forward, we need to schedule. You'll see the schedule coming up that we've added some subcommittee meetings to, et cetera. I think we need to add specific, maybe one-off meetings, meet with the finance group, meet with the select board, meet with the school committee as we get through different milestones, so we don't cascade all that information on them. So we can certainly talk about that offline, but we should make sure that everybody is informed of what's happening, and so we don't run into an issue like that again.
Yeah, to be sure, this was a bit fast-tracked, and we didn't do as good a job as we should have. So, any
Steve,
other?
yeah, Steve, my
comments?
question was off the top of your head, and I don't want to make this too long, but can you think of the specific questions that we didn't answer? Not the questions that the answers we provided that did not want to be heard, but what specific questions do you feel we needed to get more in depth about?
I think there was some pushback on the Wickham field. They really didn't understand that whole process. And the other thing was why we're submitting two new construction, which is basically the same thing to MSBA. And then, of course, the timing of the meeting, why it was so close to when we have to do that. And I tried to explain that's the way the timing was. We had to wait for estimates to come back and get that committee meeting going and meet with the subgroup. And so that was basically timing, but I think
So
it caused a lot of confusion.
I think some of that confusion lies with me. I should have been clear that the prescriptive elements of MSBA requires us to evaluate each site with the same criteria. And Whitcomb came out low because on an even playing field, they didn't meet the mark. And even though a number of people wanted Whitcomb in the process to, and I know that a couple of people wanted to say, well, you know, let's just put Whitcomb in and, you know, let's modify the presentation to MSB and put Whitcomb in there. Well, that would have negated the entire process. And I think I fell short on that.
Yeah, there's little things like that that we probably take for granted, Steve.
I know.
That those people just didn't really understand, and it wasn't explained properly, so.
Yeah, I take the blame for that. So, but
Oh, we
it is
all
quite-
should have spoke up, Steve. I mean, it's not just you, and
No,
there's other committee members there. We all should have spoke up.
quite frankly, I was a little bit blindsided by it, and I should have been a little bit quicker on my feet, but I wasn't. So,
There's three other people with their hands up. So Kelly, Steve, and Suresh have, so up to you. Who you want to call on next?
Suresh,
I was just gonna make a suggestion, which was just mentioned. If you can have a liaison from each committee, like from the Board of Selectmen as well as the Finance Committee, attend the building committee meetings, that goes a long way because then they know what's happening in the background.
good idea. Yep. And Steve from Studio G.
I would just say, one, from my memory, I do believe that it had been discussed that the process was a certain format, and I don't believe that was acknowledged by the individual that was making their case. But perhaps to Stephen Nudi's point, that could have been reiterated by other individuals. So there may be certain things that that people are willing to hear and not hear, and that's just the reality of it. But that aside, I would like to suggest we had such a great process going into this meeting of everyone preparing the presentation and helping to make sure that the story was detailed. Could we have done better? Probably. But I think that was a good experience. We probably had a shorter runway due to the pace of the project than we might have all have chosen. But I'd also like to suggest if we could also have perhaps let's continue that process, but also have a follow-up meeting with the group. So any of this feedback, we can take that into consideration, at that time while it's fresh in people's minds, and we can, do a more complete job in the future.
That's a good point, Steve. I think it was really well presented, and it took almost 2.5 hours to do a half-hour presentation. So there were questions and there was dialogue, and some people didn't think there was quite enough of that, but that was really not the purpose of the meeting. And perhaps we should have had a follow-up meeting to discuss, the results. But anyway, it is what it is.
Kelly?
yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot since we had that meeting. We have to remember that the timeline set by MSBA is pretty tight. We really didn't have good information to meet with the public until the week before. And then we had to go through the information and create a presentation that would make sense to the public. So I think considering the deadlines that we had, we did what we could. I would have liked to perhaps have one more meeting before we submitted it, but we have to adhere to the timeline. We've already extended it a couple of times, and I think there's and maybe I'm wrong, a lack of understanding of process in terms of what the Shaker Lane Building Committee's charges. And better clarity.
And maybe we have to, do a better job informing people of that.
Yeah, because we all know we were assembled as a committee to make decisions and represent the boards that the elected officials are on, and as an employee, I represent the school committee. So I think we did the best we could under the circumstances, but it would be nice as we move forward to try to build in some of that time to to make sure that we have a couple of meetings before a big decision is made, or at least one meeting.
And they can be very similar to this. They can be Zoom meetings. They can be, quick virtual meetings to make sure everybody, understands where we are in the process. If they want to have them in person, we can certainly do that. But I agree. We should make an effort to include others that need to understand what the process is, and I will do that going forward.
So I think the takeaway from last Wednesday's meeting was great presentation, not well received for whatever reason. So anyway, why don't we move on to
Steve? Just you got two more. Steve Venuti and Stacy have their hands up too.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Stacy. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I just wanted to add that, I think the presentation was good. I think we did the best we could do at the time and with the resources that we had. But I did want to note that perhaps even though Whitcomb Field is one of the options that we're not pursuing, it may still be that we want to incorporate in our presentations for the town meetings. If that is still something that people are interested in understanding why that we kind of put the kibosh on it, it might just be a really impactful slide just to have so that people understand that due diligence was done for Whitcomb Fields.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Good point.
Yep. And I just want to make it clear that I thought the presentation, Studio G and Turner Townsend was excellent. I mean, it did exactly what it needed to do. It's just some people weren't ready for a project of that size, caught them off guard.
Mm-hmm.
We need to better communicate things up front. That's the only point I wanted to make. Just so people understood. That's all.
Appreciate that. Yep.
And Meryl.
So I just wanted to chime in. I think I'm the only one on this. I'm getting an echo. Are you hearing an echo? Well, maybe it's on.
A little bit of static.
Okay. I just want to say, as someone who was not involved in the throws, thank you to the team who amazingly carried this through. As an observer, it came off really well. So I watched the video. It looked very cohesive. There's a lot of information. I feel like there was a couple of members in the crowd who just tried to steer with their own agendas. But at the same time, I think you should give yourself some really good credit that it was very well orchestrated. It seemed really very, we presented a uniform front. So I think that helped. And I think you guys were in the throes of it. So of course it's more personal. I was 500 feet in the air, knowing the information, but just observing from afar. And I think kudos because it came off really well. So I think you guys are focusing in on the little negatives, but it was really an overall positive presentation. So
Thanks. Okay, any other questions or comments before we proceed? So we'll move on to Mark and take it away.
We need the vote, Steve, for the PDP. You jumped in with a question before we actually voted.
Let's see, preferred schematic. So I'm looking at.
While you're looking at that, Steve, I have something from Mark. I didn't read this 100%, but I was flipping through it and looking through it. And on page 130, I think the heading is wrong. 131.
Okay.
It's in the section for option 1, but the heading says option 2.1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Duly noted.
Yeah, I sent a couple of suggestions to Mary Lee today as well.
Awesome. Great people that did some good summer reading. Nice.
Night
Great.
It's
So
great
I
to know
guess
people are reading this.
Yeah.
So is there a motion to accept the PSR, or the PDP as amended, to submit to the MSBA.
Do we want to just say what the options are and specifically the titles too? I'm not sure what. I mean, this is an official vote, so I'm sure that we want to have the minutes reflect that. So, Mark Stafford, could you just maybe outline that for us? What that should be?
So, hold on a second. So you're voting on authorizing the owner's project manager to submit to the MSBA the preliminary design program for the Shaker Lane Elementary School on August 30th, 2024.
And identifies 3 particular options. What are those numbers, Mary Lee? Do you remember?
Yes, option 2.1, which is the Ad Reno to the east. Option 3.1, which is new construction on the upper field. And option 3.2, which is new construction on the lower field.
Perfect. Is there a motion to approve?
So
Ryan, can you do a roll call?
Yeah. Right. I'll say so moved. And if we get a second on that?
Second.
Okay. All right. And I'll go through the roll call on that because I have the list. So first up, Kelly Clenchy.
Kelly Clenchy, yes.
Steve Moore.
Yes.
Bob Romley.
Yes.
Mike Scaduto.
Yes.
Steve Venuti.
Steve Venuti, yes.
Michelle Kane.
Michelle Kane, yes.
Stacy.
This is Pat, yes.
And Ryan Ferrara is a yes. So that is a unanimous vote to authorize the OPM to submit the preliminary design program and the 3 affiliated options. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's in the whole MSBA process, as you're all well aware of, and I think that video explains it quite well. This is a big milestone. This is the foundation that we're going to build everything off of. So thanks everybody for your incredible amount of work to get us to this point, really in a short amount of time. So congrats.
And by the way, I saved the best news for the last. The MSBA board did approve to go ahead.
Matt, you're gonna, I keep on muting you. You keep on getting off the mute. That's where the feedback's coming on. So, okay, thank you.
So the MSBA board did approve to go ahead for projects coming after January 1st, 2025 at $645 a square foot as of this morning. So
yeah, the
board approved this morning.
The board of directors meeting, yeah. Yeah, it's not $1,200 a square foot. Yikes. Anyway,
that was just hearsay. So
thank goodness.
Shared between a few of us, but anyway.
All right, great. So moving on. If I don't know if you guys can take control. So life after PDP. If you guys want to talk, Stu, do you want to pull up your presentation so we can walk through that?
Yep, I will pull it up right now.
Awesome.
All right. Do you see that as full screen or do you see the?
That's perfect.
Full screen? Okay, great.
Yep.
So 3 things we want to talk about is the work plan of what we have next. No time to take a break. We got to dive right into the PSR. Then we need to talk about community outreach, which is now going to include those other committees. And then we'll talk about district action items at the end. So here is the calendar you're used to seeing. It's been updated for the PSR. We are right here. School started yesterday. And so what we have coming up is we are submitting the PDP to the MSBA on Friday. You guys just voted. We can check that off. And then what we really need to do is use September to focus on design. So we will be working closely with the Design and Site Subcommittee to look at developing the interior so that we can really make a good, solid decision by the end of PSR, which one of these options will move forward into schematic design. This is also where we really need to start community outreach. And I have on one of my later slides a bunch of suggestions that we can talk about together and brainstorm of what to do. In October, we have the special town meeting on October 29th, where we will be doing approximately 10-minute presentation to update the community. And I think Ryan has suggested that we reconvene that joint leadership group again sometime before the 29th. And we talked about this internally a little bit today to try to figure out when that could happen. And based on the design work we have to do in September, and we would really like to get the next construction cost estimate in before we meet with all these people again, so we have updated numbers. And we need to give our estimators enough time to go through it and come up with good numbers. So that means that this week of the 21st, ideally towards the end of the week, would be when we have that second town leadership meeting.
What were you thinking again, Marl?
Okay, so ideally it would be October 23rd, 24th, or 25th. But if it had to happen earlier in that week, we could make that work too.
Okay.
Who pulled together this last one? Was it Brian? It felt like that came together really well on short notice. So hopefully we can do that again.
So, just for everyone's consideration, the second and fourth Wednesday of every month is the PMBC meeting. So we do seem to, no, I guess we're okay here. Never mind.
The 24th, we have a school committee meeting.
That's right, yeah.
Kelly and I may not be able to make that one work.
Or alternatively, we might want to set that as the date and do it as a combined meeting too, Michelle.
That is music to my ears to not have a meeting. So if the boss can make that happen, the boss can make it happen,
Yeah,
but I hope he can.
I can certainly have a conversation. We do have pretty heavy agendas as well. So if need be, we'll see what we can do.
But again, I don't think we want to repeat what we just did, waiting a little while and getting three groups together. We might want to think about meeting the finance group on their own, meeting the select board on their own, meeting the school committee on their own. And there could be times when all three can get together, and that's great. But I think the outreach, we need to show a little bit more. As I said earlier, there could be quick Zoom meetings, whatever, just to keep everybody in the loop.
Okay, yeah, we'd be happy to do that as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a broader conversation. You do have the finance committee chair on this meeting, which is, that's there is something to be said for trying to have all those groups together at the same time.
True.
But but at the same time, I don't know. I would defer to the chairs of those groups as to how they'd like to handle it.
The only thing I would comment about waiting for the week of the 21st to show the presentation for the town meeting of the 29th, you might get the same pushback where is a rush thing. They're giving us information 3 days before town meeting now. If we could do preliminary stuff earlier in the month, maybe not have the exact presentation for town meeting, but at least go through some of the things that you plan on covering. Maybe
we could do that. The big piece of
the second week.
Yeah.
The big piece we really want to talk to them about, though, is the updated budget number. And it's going to be really tough to get it before that week.
We can still have that joint meeting in the week of the 21st and with the updated budget number, but just to say what the progress is, answer any lingering questions that we may have.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Get those in the first 2 weeks of October. That would probably be the better alternative.
Okay.
If it's joint or just finance committee, I'm open to either one.
Well, we should have most of the information that would go, because we're going to give that to the estimator that first week of October. So we could at least basically show them pretty much everything that we have without cost information, right? To sort of prime that.
Yeah, we could do that.
That wouldn't be difficult.
Yeah, and then share the cost information as early as we possibly can prior to the special town meeting, just so there's no, sticker shock again at that point. If it comes in the week prior, at least we prepped them, telling the process, as Steve was just saying, what we're going through, and then we're waiting for numbers to come in and get the numbers to them as soon as possible, and then get it out to the public. So, yeah, I think that's doable.
So how long does it take the cost estimator to put an estimate together? Is it like 3 weeks?
2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks, yeah. And we're going to be doing it concurrently with Studio G's group and our group. So we and remember we're looking at 3 options. There's 3 options that are being estimated. So again, it's going from PDP to PSR is a little bit more development. It's kind of looks like a building now, and they get an outline, and there's a little bit more information. It's not the full schematic design yet, but there is more information. So we're going to push them as quickly as they can get it, but at least 2 to 3 weeks is the ballpark.
Yeah, I used to manage a scheduling or a estimating group, and the sooner you get into the queue, the better off you are.
Exactly.
Yep.
Is there a reason?
More, Stacy has her hand raised.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a reason why we have to wait until October 1st to have them start these estimates? Because we have our 3 options. What's the holdup in these next 4 weeks?
The options get further, they get further developed, Stacy.
Yeah,
So
we need time to do design work.
Yeah, the options that you saw in the PDP are very preliminary based on square foot cost, size of the program, educational requirements. That got everything together with the designs that they showed. They were just quick models. They were not exactly what the building's going to look like. Now, when they proceed into the preferred schematic report, those 3 options are now going to be fine-tuned more.
Okay.
Not a full schematic design, but to a point where it'll look like a building. They'll color code all the spaces, and they'll make all these things work. They'll do a lot of work with the site to make sure all that works. And that information at a minimum is what we need to send to the cost estimators.
It's that, and it's also the work of our sub-consultants.
Right.
So there's going to be test pits and borings and other further site investigation now that we've narrowed it down.
Yeah, and structural and HVAC and more traffic stuff. There's all those people have to weigh in with information to a point where an estimator can give us a good range of what they're looking at. So
Plus,
right.
by that time, you're going to have feedback from MSBA,
right,
from their review period, right?
correct.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the schedule we have it towards the end. Yeah.
Actually, that's a great point, Steve, because Mark, would we have like a no from MSBA what they would be considering for reimbursement? I mean, not the number, but like the stuff that we've above the baseline.
I don't believe I don't think a no usually comes out of a PDP. It's going to be their checklist of things that they were looking for in the submission that they'll say you did or you didn't do. They'll probably agree with the 3 options they may have questions about the 3 options and maybe the other options, but they take their 21 days and we take our 14 days to reply. But Suresh, I don't know if you could add on to this. It's rare that I've ever seen them say, unless a PDP was not done well, it's rare, I think, that they're going to say, no, you can't do these. You're going to say, no, develop them, whatever.
Yeah, usually it's at the PSR level that you start getting more into details and comments back on the square footage. Right now, they're just going to do a preliminary review. Yes, do you meet the guidelines of the programs? That's what they'll be looking for, but they're not giving you a full detailed comment on that.
So they're not deciding how much square footage that they're going to cover, or whether they accept that extra 30,000 square feet?
Not at PDP, or more towards the end of PSR. When we make the PSR submission, that's when it goes to the board for approval further.
What I've seen in the past is they'll give an initial approval and say, yes, we're okay with this, because we really need it. It could be a large impact. So if a district is asking for 3 extra classrooms, they really need an answer from the MSBA about whether or not that's likely to go through, because if they wait until right before schematic design, it's not going to work. So what I've seen the MSBA do is say, yes, we have no objections to these, or they'll say, give us a little bit more information, or we don't see this covered in your educational program, or they'll give that type of feedback. So we should have a pretty good idea when we get their comments back, how the the 30,000 square feet, additional square feet was taken.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
You
you.
have some idea, but not full idea. That's that, after PSR level, but you will get some ideas back
Yeah.
from them.
Steve Moore, Kelly Clenchey and Steve Mark have their hands up.
Yeah. I just wanted clarification on that meeting prior to October 21st, the purpose of it. And if we are going to meet, I would strongly encourage us to meet with the 3 boards, not just the FinCom. But I'm not sure what the purpose is, so maybe that would help me.
I would say it's just another update.
What date was that?
Just an update. So
Where
the
we are in
meeting
the
on the
process.
24th would be very different. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I still feel strongly, though, that if we're going to meet with one board, we should meet with the other 2 boards just to keep them informed.
I totally agree. That's fine.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And Steve Mark also had his hand up.
Yeah, so quick, this is probably a Studio G question. At what point in time in the design do we start looking at what the square footage is from the initial design versus like what can we cut out, what can't we cut out in order to reduce the scope of the project and therefore reduce the cost of the project potentially? Just have those conversations.
Yeah, we should really be 99.9% certain by the end of PSR, but the absolute set in stone deadline is the end of schematic design.
So just to let everyone know what PSR is at 30%?
For, I'm sorry, 30% of what?
What schematic design is at 30%?
Close enough, Steve. I would say close enough. More like 25% for schematic design.
Well, 25, 30%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we go into VE.
Correct.
Right.
Right. It's at the very end of schematic design that the board votes for us to move on and the project funding agreement budget is set. Then at that point, you're going to know from the MSBA the project cost, what they're going to reimburse. That there's a form called the 3011 that we put together for them, which is a very long, detailed budget. And we spell everything out for that. And those are going to be the numbers that come at the end of schematic design. And that's a year from October, right? We've got some time to go through that. The next module 4, schematic design. So that's at the time when you really got to know the numbers. But up through PSR, there will be tightening of things as much as they can based on their comments. We do have what they call a facilities assessment subcommittee with the MSBA that we meet with and have discussions with them about the 3 alternatives we're reviewing and the one that we're looking at as the one alternative we want to push forward. So there is, comment from them on square footage, all those things will be discussed.
Okay. Steve Moore, Steve Mitchell has his hand up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve from Studio G.
You're muted, Steve.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Steve Moore, I think you said the word VE, is that correct?
Value engineering, right?
Yeah. I just wanted to address that. There will be along the way, so during the schematic design process, can someone refresh me how many estimates we'll do for that?
For schematic design, there'll be 2.
There'll be 2, right?
Yeah.
So as we go along, I would say sometime in schematic design, we'll be earmarking, of course, we'll be looking for efficiencies, how things come together. How can we make everything that everyone has deemed required for this project through the educational plan. So we're making sure that we provide spaces for all that. But we'll look for ways to do that as efficiently as possible that make sense for expansion. There will also be, so we'll have cost estimate check-ins during that process.
So, excuse me, Steve, but Mark, At what point do we have to make a decision on the delivery method? Are we doing GC or are we doing CM at risk?
Yeah, that's something that has to be decided during, it's schematic design, I believe.
I think we
Yeah,
said
it's
between
schematic
December
design. Modular
and
4, we
February.
have to know at the end of schematic design
Because
which
that's
way we
gonna have,
want to go.
that's going to have a big impact on value engineering.
Absolutely.
I believe we had discussed that we would do that before schematic design, that we would target at least a discussion.
We can certainly discuss it, but it typically happens through schematic because you're dealing with one option now. You're developing the one option, and you have to
Right.
decide whether it's pragmatic, efficient, based on the one option to go CM at risk or go design bid build. So it's typically through schematic. We can certainly have those conversations as we're developing those options through PSR, knowing that we're leaning towards a certain option, but yeah, typically it's through schematic.
Yeah, we don't want to do three cost estimates until we go through the value engineering.
Well, I would say that I just want to put a finer point on that, and there are a couple different ways that we would approach the VE. We're looking for efficiencies all the way along. We get a pulse during cost estimates, and we identify sort of we identify the absolutely necessary to have, and perhaps some areas that could be options for that VE should we come to that.
And I think the school building committee will identify items that we should not identify in VE. So that's a discussion for later on down the line. But anyway, let's.
Hey, Matt, you had a comment? Matt McCaffrey's hands up.
Yep.
Yeah, just that. Back to Steve's question about CM at risk or DBB. Other things like soil investigations. Some of the things that are going to happen here shortly are going to weigh on that decision. You know, if we have more things to deal with in the soils and site situation of the options, right? Traffic type things. Those things will have an impact on the decision of CMR or DBB. That's
a
it.
Good point. Thank you.
I'd also just one last thing I would like to mention that during our last presentation on the schedule, on the schedule that we showed, sort of the modules, we did say that there would be, I believe on that it says that we'll be discussing which procurement method to do really between December and February, sort of at the those early stages of schematic design. I mean, that's what we said in front of all those folks. If we need to change that, we should.
Well, right, during schematic design. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Not PSR. Yeah. Okay.
Correct. After PSR.
All right. Any more questions on the schedule here? Do we have any other thoughts going forward on the dates that are shown here?
We didn't come to a consensus on the meeting that we're going to have before the 29th, correct?
Can we maybe ask the representatives from each of those committees who are on the SBC to go back to their respective groups and just set a day during the first 2 weeks of October for when that meeting should take place? And we're happy to show up during one of their regularly scheduled meetings so they don't have to do an extra meeting or anything like that. But the sooner we get this scheduled, I think the happier people will be.
I think we can do that. I think between Kelly representing the school committee, myself representing the select board, and Steve, the finance committee, could be okay.
Did we pick a date for the week of October 21st, or are we still discussing that?
I heard that we could do either individual updates with those three committees, or we could do both, sort of come back to them and do a final State of the Union before the meeting on the 29th.
I think we want to do a joint meeting earlier in October and a joint meeting on the week of the 21st.
Agreed.
All right,
Yep.
Kel?
Yep.
I would say, just as an observer, it did feel like there was kind of a power in numbers that started to happen a little bit that I think could really benefit than this group talking amongst themselves, this group talking amongst themselves. So it might be beneficial. And again, just as an outside observer watching it go down on Littleton TV. But so that kind of, I don't know if those in the room felt the same sense, but it definitely seemed like a more powers in numbers to keep this moving along and the importance of it.
Yep.
But in order to make sure that they feel like they're being communicated with, then we're gonna have to do it more often than not.
Yeah.
We're not, that's why I was suggesting if there's a finance committee meeting, we meet with them and meet with the other people and then have a group meeting and then continue updating that, maybe the group meeting is another one in person.
Right.
These other separate meetings, we just join their meeting on Zoom or whatever, give them all an update, the individual groups, and then get together with them, then do it again and do it again before. So there's no, surprises come the 29th of October. I would suggest as many times as we can talk to these folks, because clearly what came out of that meeting was, yeah, great presentation. You landslided us. Like there was way too much. We should have seen this stuff earlier. We need to do a better job doing that. So I think let's do a better job doing that.
Meryl, I hear what you're saying about the smaller groups, but I think it's also important that everybody hears the same thing and we know everybody has heard the same thing.
Yeah, no, that's the direction I was going. Could all three groups meet together? Because that's where the power, that's where I think it kind of, the dynamics seemed to shift a little bit when everybody was in the room and you had positive input and it kind of tamed everybody else. So at least that's what I observed. But
I see this at work where we have multiple stakeholders. You have the same meeting with all the stakeholders and they all come away with a different perspective. So to Steve Benuti's point, I think we need to have joint meetings and not, one-offs.
Yeah.
All right. We'll work with you all to schedule joint meetings in that. Is it in person or virtual or either or hybrid or?
We'll work with you on that.
Yeah.
The meetings are the meetings. If we could just keep this moving. So we'll figure something out, guys, and we'll report back to Studio G and Turner Townsend area what we want to do.
Perfect.
Great.
I'm sorry, but I have a hard stop at 8, so I have notes up until 8 o'clock, but I do have to get off the meeting. My apologies.
Okay, moving along to budget update. That's the end.
No, they got just Studio G has a few more slides to talk about community development. Yeah.
All right, so community engagement.
Outreach, yeah.
We have a list of suggestions of people we could reach out to and include. I'm not going to go through this list for time, but it's a suggestion for a starting point. I do want to say that if you don't already know this, legally, Studio G and TTH are not allowed to sort of campaign on behalf of the project. It's considered a conflict of interest, but what we can do is support you. So if you need us to show up and talk to people, or you need us to create graphics or host Zooms or give informational talks or whatever it is, we're more than welcome to do that. But the actual outreach is really up to people on this committee. So here's a few more suggestions, things that we've done in the past. We've gotten students involved, and that's always been really positive. And being able to use images of what the students did really helps garner enthusiasm amongst everybody else. We already did the initial community outreach survey. We can do more. We already talked about putting an FAQ on the website, so we could even go into a lot of detail about why Whitcomb site was not chosen, and just a few other suggestions here. So what we would really like to have happen is perhaps a subcommittee is formed for community outreach, just because it's going to be a lot of work and we've got our work cut out for us.
I think we had this conversation a month ago, and I believe, Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said your office was going to handle that?
Well, I think this is a little broader than, and I knew we were going to do this. I was just thinking of the basic circulation of communication, etc.
Okay.
But in terms of the meetings, I mean, if we're going to do something like this, we would need a subcommittee, somebody from the school, obviously, and I certainly can help out as well. And you know, it would be helpful to have somebody from the Shaker Lane, somebody else from the Shaker Lane Building Committee as well. I mean, there are other events too that we're going to have to think about in terms of town events that are going to be really important to get the word out as well. So,
would it be helpful to have any, community individuals involved in that outreach committee?
yeah, I think it would be.
So if we could identify some, I'm just talking through my hat at this point.
No, if there's anybody in the community that's willing to help get the word out on this project, I think that as a volunteer, I think they'd be more than welcome.
Yeah.
Because
who was the woman that was 2 seats?
Marlena.
Janine.
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 Yep, school committee member.
At that last meeting, she sounded ready to go on this and sounded very enthusiastic. So you might consider her.
Sure.
Steve Moore, I don't want to, we're going to lose Stacy. So I don't know if there's other things that we can push off to the next meeting, or if we can just try to, wrap this up. Because
I sent a budget update to you all and it was incorrect. So I will follow up with the correct one after this meeting. It's just a tally of where we are, what we spent to date. And then we just had another schedule, overall master schedule to look at, but Marilee and Studio G pulled a lot of that same information and put it on their calendar. So you always have that master schedule to refer to. That was the last two things that we wanted to jump on. So we can certainly move on.
Yeah, and I don't want to rush you guys. I have to re-listen to this meeting anyway to do notes. So if we have anything else to vote on, and I think we have a quorum. So
yeah,
I'm going to.
Yes.
We're done with the voting. Yeah.
I think we're done. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Do a roll call.
Yeah, I'll do the roll call. Kelly made the motion. I seconded. So Kelly Clenchy,
yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Bob Romley,
Bob Romley, yes.
Steve Venuti,
Steve Venuti, yes.
Michelle Kane,
Michelle Kane, yes.
and Ryan Farrar, yes. Scuduto, is he still on?
Mike Scuduto, yes.
Mike Scuduto, I didn't, okay, sorry. Yes, sorry, Mike. My apologies.
All good.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. We'll send you out an email on Friday when the Eagle has landed at the MSBA. I hope I don't break my back as I carry it there because it's so big and heavy. But we'll let you all know that it's been delivered safely. And again, thanks everybody for a tremendous amount of work.
Thanks for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for participation. Have a good long weekend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody
Yes.
as well.
Sure.
Yep.